Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial in which I am going to show you how to paint a hydrangea flower from sketching until painting and finishing the piece. And I want to mention that I was asked by someone this week on Facebook to create a tutorial for this flower because I posted another painting with a hydrangea flower, but that was pink. And I'm very happy that she asked me to create this tutorial, and I hope you like it. So here it is, and thank you so much again for asking me and recommending to do so. So the first thing that I am going to share with you is the tools that I used, and feel free to use your tools or whatever you think that would work for you. So the first tools are, of course, the brushes, size 2 and 3 brushes. The next is the palette. As you see, mine is messy, but please excuse me for that. I'm using it very often because I am working on the 365 days of art project, and I use the Schminke Horror Dem tube colors, and the specific colors that I was using in this video were manganese violet, brilliant purple, and mountain blue, sepia brown, ivory black. So the paper that I used is from Canson Aquarelle 300 GSM. And I recommend you to use a good eraser and a pencil, and of course tissue paper and clean water. I want to mention that I filmed this after painting, so the water is not really clean as you see, but I recommend you to use clean water. The next thing that I want to talk about is the sketching part. As you see, I started to sketch from the middle. I used the photograph that I took of my neighbor's flower. I want to encourage you to be relaxed when you sketch, and I usually don't listen to any music because it bothers me, but I recommend you, if you like to sketch with music, I recommend you to use music wherever it works for you. And maybe this flower seems very complicated in the beginning and very intimidating, but it's very important to be relaxed when you sketch and start with the parts you find easier to draw first, and then continue with the other petals. And I want to mention that I didn't want to create a very accurate sketch compared to the painting, since this is not a portrait or a painting of a person, and their proportions has to be very accurate. But this is not a portrait, so for me it didn't really matter if I didn't create the same petals or the same proportions and the same lines as in the photograph, the reference photo. I recommend you at this part to use the pencil gently and don't push it too hard, because it should be a very soft and thin line art. So when we finish the painting, we don't really see the marks of the pencil. So the next thing that I wanted to share with you is the painting process, of course. And it may seem very difficult or intimidating at first, but it's pretty simple actually, if we learn the basic rule for creating those beautiful gradients. And I want to tell you that there are two colors that we mash together, so we have to achieve that gradient with a little bit of exercise and practice. It can be done easily, because practice can develop good habits when adding water, mixing colors, lifting up water from the paper, etc. So the more you do it, the better it gets, and since this is just an experiment, it doesn't have to be perfect. I recommend you to start with the blue, but you don't have to start with the blue. I'm just saying that I think it's easier to get to the violet slowly, because violet is the mix of blue and pink. I think that it would be a little bit harder to start with purple and then adding more and more blue until you reach the blue, because I think that it would still be a little bit purple. It's not impossible, but I think this is more easier for me. So I recommend you to start with whatever color you use. I start with blue and apply it on the paper, and dip your brush into blue again on the palette and add some pink and mix them, and then continue painting on the paper. the last color until you reach the line has to be purple. So as you're working and you see that you have too much water on the paper, I recommend you to lift the water by wiping the brush and then dip it into the water that you have on the paper and then wiping again until you find it okay. Or if you think that you have very little water and you see that it starts to get dry, I recommend you to dip into the paint or into the water and apply it on the paper so it doesn't get dry. As you can see, I already created a couple of colors on my palette because I wanted to use from those on multiple petals, but it's easier if you work on only one petal and you start with the color and add from the other color a little, mix it and then apply it again on the paper and continue until you reach the line. So in the beginning we were working on the gradient part and then later we add some shadows. I recommend you to look at a photograph with different eyes, if I can say that. Just concentrate on the tones and the parts that are darker and add some shadows. And the funny thing is that I am using usually blue or purple for shadows in other illustrations, so this time I had to choose something else and I chose brown and black. I usually don't like black for shadows, but I used it a little bit here. And just pay attention, where do you see that the flower starts to be a bit in the shadow, which are the petals that are covering other petals, and just make some little marks of shadows. And you can make the shadows softer by wiping the edge of the paint that you applied on the paper with a bit cleaner brush. So I recommend you to dip again the brush into the water and wipe it, and then wipe the edge of the water and paint of the shadow, and then you will get some very smooth edges. As you can see, in the end I experimented a little. I like to put some splashes, and I like to see how water and watercolor reacts on paper, and I think this is actually the most beautiful part of watercolor, because you can see the paint in action and it's something that you cannot control, but still it looks beautiful. For this to achieve, I recommend you to use a bit of extra water and just play with the colors, and be careful not to use too much water because we don't want the paper to bend. You will see how much water the paper can hold. I also want to mention that this is not the way how to create this flower, how to paint, but this is my way. It's not how you should do. It's just something that I figured out and I would like to share it with you. And it's based on my experiments and my exercises, and something that I figured out while I was using watercolor. And I tried to figure out, when I was looking at others' watercolor paintings, I tried to figure out how did they create that effect, how did they paint this flower, and this is how I see it, and this is what I came up with, and this is the best way for me. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel and like this video if you liked it, to see more videos from me. And thank you so much for watching my video, and I look forward to seeing you next time in my next video. If you found this video helpful, and if you have a friend and you think that it would be helpful for them, feel free to share it with them and let me know how did your painting turn out, what do you think about it. And please feel free to share with me your paintings. Until next time, and have a nice day. And thank you so much.